So Metro Boomin's just dropped a new album called Heroes and Villains, and the track that's blowing up right now is called Creepin, featuring The Weeknd and 21 Savage. I'm really excited to get into it. So Metro Boomin's obviously a producer, but he's got a couple of co-production credits on this, including DaHeala, who's famous for a lot of work with The Weeknd, Peter Lee Johnson, and Johan Lenox. What's really cool is it's also kind of a cover of a Mario Winans song, and he's also done some background vocals alongside Travis Scott on this one. First of all, I want to talk about drum clipping. I think Metro Boomin's a prime example of this style of drum processing. You can hear in almost all of the songs that he's ever done, you've got incredibly hard-hitting trap drums and a way that they not only hit with a bunch of impact, but also carry through to the mid-range so you can hear the kick nice and loud on laptops and phones and whatnot, is through drum clipping. So just smashing and maximizing the volume out of each drum hit. And you hear this all over the track. And you hear it in a couple of different varieties, which is really interesting. So you've got sections of the song that have these hard-hitting trap drums, but you've also got sections that have these kind of 80s mid-range, more organic drum machine sounding drums, both with pretty audible clipping or maximization in terms of the audio. The drums in this track really sit on top of the beat. I just want to give a nod to Dr. Dre, who kind of popularized in hip hop, just mixing drums stupid loud so that they're less something that you're trying to hear in the instrumentation and more something that just completely drives the energy and impact of the song. The way that they've mixed both different sections of the drums is really interesting. The trap drums are quite stock standard, very loud, very scooped, meaning treble heavy and bass heavy without a ton of mid-range presence. The 80s sounding drum samples are a little different. They're very strong in the mid-range. I think they've used what sounds like a distortion going into a reverb, might be the other way around, just to create a sense of space for the 80s drum machine sounding drums. Very cool stuff. And the way that the track moves in and out of completely different drum kits, I think is really impressive. So hats off to the mix engineer who has made that happen and made it not just noticeable, but also smooth and not detracting from the listen. Couldn't for the life of me find out who mixed and mastered this project. So if anyone knows, please let me know. Also want to talk about another couple of things, one of which being the extreme use of filters in this track. As soon as you chuck it on, you notice that it's an orchestral sounding song with a bunch of vocal layers and strings and just beautiful instrumentation. But as soon as we get around to the vocals, it's almost like they completely disappear underwater. There's very extreme use of filters or EQ to carve out room for the vocals so that the Weeknd can just exist over this atmosphere, this just kind of bed of sound with an enormous amount of space. And I guess they fill that space with these huge long tail reverbs for the Weeknd. It's actually really beautiful. The Weeknd's got very present, controlled, compressed vocals, but because he's got such massive, wet vocals, it does put him back a little bit in the mix, and it essentially achieves the same depth of space that the orchestra does. So he's only just sitting on top of the orchestra, whereas the drums are sitting on top of almost everything, vocals included. Also wanted to point out another couple of things with the Weeknd's vocal. He hits these beautiful runs towards the end of the song, and I think I can actually hear some clipping that occurred in his take. Must have been just a spur of the moment thing that the engineer wasn't ready for, but I thought that was kind of interesting for such a big record. Also, the Weeknd's got this huge, strong vibrato that I believe is either preserved or exaggerated with Melodyne. Obviously, auto-tune tries to cancel that out, so that was cool to pick up on as well. We've got a feature from 21 Savage on the song, and it's cool to hear him with more reverb on his voice than usual, but there's still less than what's happening on the Weeknd's vocal chain and the Weeknd's reverbs, which I think is perfect because at this section of the song, when you've got your rap feature, you kind of want it to feel immediate. You want it to feel confessional, whereas the Weeknd's painting this beautiful space. 21, you kind of want to be right in your ear and feel present and immediate, and that's exactly what the mix engineers achieved here. Finally, with the vocals, I wanted to point out that the background vocals have nowhere near the amount of treble or high end that both Abel and 21 have on their vocal chain. And again, it's just another mix decision that helps the vocals pop above the mix and keep everything else out of the way, which I'm finding is a recurring theme with all of these really big, really successful records. So we've covered getting out of the way of the vocals as per usual, creating an atmosphere and the right sense of presence with vocals, and how clipping your drum samples can make them feel loud and impactful. This is a really cool song, and I'm keen to see it do many more numbers. Until next time.